We are going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. We wish our first meeting of the Reformed Women in Leadership could have been in person. We were hoping it would be, and we hope that in the future we can do that. But we are on Zoom and delighted to be able to do that with all of you today. We are just delighted to have County Commissioner Kate Dean as well as Desiree Albeck from the SBA here for this economic conversation. It seems timely. And thank you all to a few very brave men who have joined us today. We applaud you for that and are delighted that you are with us. And due to the graciousness of both the county commissioner and the SBA for taking QA, we're going to run probably a little bit long today, and I want to warn you all of that so you're prepared. And if you need to bail out, we understand. We often do back-to-back Zoom calls. Probably only 10 or 15 minutes to allow you time for QA and those brieflies at the end of the session. Generally, our cafes are held on the first and third Friday of the month and open to all businesses with no membership required, and they are at no cost. The cafe schedule is always up on our website and in the events section with registration required for Zoom access. A little more housekeeping. You are all silenced when you enter, but if you'd like to speak or need to, remember to unmute yourself and then remute so that we keep that ambient noise down to a minimum. We are recording, as that loud announcement told you, and we will have it up on our YouTube channel, usually within 2 business days of our session. Generally, and today is no exception, we had between 30 and 50 people sign up for the cafe, and we lose about 50% between sign up and log in. So we'll have to see how we do today. I'm not sure how it's going to fly. We always have the best of intentions when we sign up, and then conflicts happen. So, and toward that end, we send out an e-blast out to a very wide audience and upload it to the YouTube channel and get dozens of views usually that day and hundreds more in the following weeks. And at the end of each cafe, if you haven't joined us before, we have brieflies where there's a moment or two for anyone who wishes to share what's going on in their business or an event they're participating in or something other exciting that they think we should share. Today we're going to hear from the county first and then have time for QA, and then we're going to move on to the SBA. We are thrilled to introduce County Commissioner Kate Dean and thank her for joining us today. It's been a busy week at the county. Kate, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Arlene. And it has been a bit of a crazy week. I was hoping to have a little more of a data-rich presentation to give you, but it's all things COVID right now over here at the county, which inspired me to go kind of a different direction with my comments today. I first off want to say thank you all. I know many of you and the good work that you do. So thank you for what you are doing in difficult times right now. I want to give you a little bit of my background because I think it's relevant to much of the work that you do and some of my comments today. So I moved to this community in the late 90s. I moved to Quilcene as a young organic farmer just when the local food movement was getting started. The farmers market was just a few vendors in a downtown parking lot. I joined the board to try and grow that market. And we were excited that year that the market sales totaled $10,000. And now, of course, that's a multi-million-dollar market. Like many of you, I suspect, I was a serial entrepreneur. I started Fin River Farm with the Kisslers. And then, because apparently I was a glutton for punishment, I started Mount Townsend Creamery with my then husband. We were young and ambitious and committed to growing this whole new food economy. It was a really exciting time to be in that burgeoning sector. But as we know, life seems to have its way with us. Having babies, losing business partners, divorce, and the Great Recession all disrupted that exciting path. I was left with a lot of pieces to pick up, to hold, and try to put back together. And I think we can all relate to that right now. We're all kind of in that boat. especially those of you owning a business during the largest pandemic that this planet has seen for a century. We are all in this place of trying to figure out how to pick up pieces, hold them, and put them back together. So this time around, I find myself in a similar place. A lot of loss and uncertainty. This week in particular feels that way. This time around, I have about 30,000 people that I'm trying to hold and keep intact at a time when there's so much collective grief, uncertainty, distrust, inequity. It can be staggering and overwhelming, which I have felt this week, and maybe some of you have too. This time is asking so much of all of us, especially community leaders like so many of you. So I keep thinking, how do we possibly respond in this moment of history that's asking so much? So I want to suggest that the very topic of today's discussion, women in leadership, is exactly how we need to respond, actually. And I don't mean this entirely literally, although I will point out that the countries that have been most successful in managing the pandemic are led by women, but instead that we as a community need to center ourselves and our work in a more inclusive, relational, and care-based framework to get ourselves through this trying time. My teenagers would scorn me for relying on old and outdated gender associations, and I generally try to avoid them. But I do think that this moment is asking women to step into their power and their agency to help heal and rebuild and rethink. We know that women and mothers have been most impacted by this pandemic, largely due to stepping back from the workforce to care for children while schools and daycares were closed. And women occupy a disproportionate share of service jobs that were either most impacted by shutdowns, like food service, hospitality, education, and or were at greatest risk of contracting COVID. And we're only starting to understand the extent to which women have borne the brunt of the pandemic. I'm going to do a couple little asides here because I think they're relevant. Last night I was making dinner, and as usual, kind of opened the fridge, variety of leftovers, little stragglers from the garden. I had no plan. It was just my husband and I had no kids at home, so I was kind of winging it. And I managed to piece together a super basic, banal dinner, fried rice, veggie fried rice. But it was really delicious. And my husband kept remarking, as he often does, how I can scrounge in the fridge and come up with a meal that's quick and healthy and satisfying and tasty in a way that he or my kids might struggle to do. And there are lots of reasons for this. I've had a lot of practice because this responsibility largely falls on my shoulders. And their gendered stereotypes create an expectation that women and mothers fulfilling this role with little regard as to whether the woman also happens to be working all day and managing myriad other household tasks, both physical and mental. But regardless, this is something I'm good at and I enjoy. And I would suggest these are the kinds of skills that many women possess that are going to get us through the pandemic and beyond. Just like in the Great Recession, we saw women adapt quickly and change jobs. They maintained their foothold in the workforce while a large portion of men left the workforce. Women have forever pivoted based on the needs of family and community. And while this is fraught with inequity, I think it's also a superpower that women hold. Another anecdote I was thinking of along this theme, every year I attend a workforce development conference in Washington, DC. And I enjoy the event, but there are many things that I don't relate to. We have a really unique economy here that isn't really represented in a lot of the case studies you read about. Other communities talk about attracting big high-tech firms and server farms and large-scale manufacturing. And while I would never discourage any of these from setting up shop in Jefferson County, they don't come knocking at our door very often. This conference was canceled in 2020 for obvious reasons, but it did happen in July this year, just when we thought we were seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of COVID. The conference was really different this year. It happened right at the time when the labor shortage started hitting hard. Where the event in previous years had paid zero attention to service workers, because who wants to invest in low-wage jobs? This year, most of the programming was about supporting these workers, about increasing minimum wage, about addressing income inequality, about insisting that childcare was part of the conversation, acknowledging that care work is grossly underpaid when it's paid at all and largely done by women. I tell you, the entire conversation at a national level about workforce was suddenly about the issues that women have struggled with forever and have largely been ignored in those conversations. Because up until then, it became hard to find employees to do this essential work, in part because they could afford to stay home and hold their families together. So I think the question is, how do we create an environment where, as we come out of COVID, we maintain this focus on living wages, flexible work schedules, availability of childcare, and cost of living? And how do we do it in our economy, which is comprised of a lot of small businesses, governments, and nonprofits that are largely struggling to keep the lights on? Again, I would suggest if we stay centered on solving issues with a lens of care, which also happens to be the perspective that women and women leaders often bring to the table, we might be able to achieve different outcomes. So how do we do this? I think it is happening at the federal level. The new infrastructure package and the reconciliation budget are both addressing this. The feds are recognizing that physical infrastructure is only as good as the social infrastructure it creates. These packages focus on housing, tax credits for working families, childcare, transit, all things that support workers, which we are all suddenly aware are the most important part of a functioning economy. At the local level, we at the county are taking a similar approach. We will receive about $13 million total in relief funding to distribute to COVID response and recovery. And this is in addition to things like utility support and rent support that are coming to OLECAP and some of our nonprofits. The county funds are being distributed in a variety of ways. A big chunk of it is going to public health and the hospital for staff, testing, vaccination. This is certainly an example of the care economy. We distributed funds to school districts to help them get open safely. Some of these funds helped cover the cost of getting internet to kids who didn't have it for school. Some was distributed directly to local businesses through the Economic Development Council to keep those businesses afloat. And I hope some of you were able to take part in that. But the big chunks of funding that we're receiving through the rescue plan, we are using for what we are calling game changers. We're working with community organizations that has a project with a need that we can help get across the finish line. And these, of course, are all beneficial to parts of the community. Some examples of these include helping the hospital's efforts to create a new child care center, and to the port to help pay for a new boat lift, a major economic driver here. A significant portion will go to homeless and transitional housing. Some projects are still in the works, things like providing funding to the PUD to expand broadband to underserved parts of the county, and to help close a funding gap for a new playground at H.J. Carroll that serves disabled and typically abled kids, the first of its kind in the area. These are just a few examples of how we're trying to use these funds in ways that makes a community livable for more people, which in turn strengthens all of our businesses and institutions. This is how a care economy works. And strangely, county revenues are strong. So we feel we can keep up the work we're doing into the future. Because counties and cities receive sales tax from online sales, we have seen consistently high, record-setting high sales tax revenues, which comprise a good portion of our total revenue. So while I encourage all of you to shop locally, know that the leakage we usually see due to shopping in Clallam and Kitsap counties was instead coming to Jefferson County while we all stayed home and did home and garden projects. So I want to encourage us all to take part in creating a new economy of care, and one that women have a major role in creating and leading. As we come out of COVID, I hope we can all bring a new lens of care that supports the workers, the families, the schools, the healthcare systems, and the safety nets that keep our communities vibrant and livable. That's all I have prepared for you today, but I am happy to talk further about this, answer any questions you might have about county government, about where we are with COVID. and really appreciate so much the good work that you all do and for coming here today to join us.
Thank you, Kate. And now I don't see a lot of questions in the chat, but I am sure there are questions in the room. So if anybody would love to speak up, and we'd love to have you do that, just raise your hand or raise your virtual hand, whichever comes first. I'll scroll through here. Thank you all for joining us and see if I see any hands. Jay, you usually have a question. What can Kate answer for you? Not asking it.
I was giving the women first opportunity, but no, it was inspiring to hear what you had to say, and I would just ask if there were anything that we in Jefferson County have as a competitive advantage that we'd be able to take advantage of or be able to build on at this time when we have this look at game changers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, and I should say I did work in economic development before becoming commissioner, and for Mayor Stinson and I worked very closely together in creating our previous comprehensive economic development strategy, a 5-year plan, and in that we were tasked specifically with thinking about competitive advantage. And like is so often the case, our greatest strength can also be a weakness. And I think that the number of small businesses and entrepreneurs we have in this community is an incredible asset that can be a source of great resilience. Unlike having one major employer where if they close down, or we're seeing with COVID and large scale shutdowns of, say, meat processing facilities, it can affect a whole community. We have a lot of small businesses that can help serve a lot of different needs, adapt more quickly and easily. But we also saw, of course, during COVID, that most of those exist with a razor thin margin. And that becomes a weakness when you have unprecedented events. So I think that is still our greatest weakness. And the lesson there is that we need to be sure that those businesses have the support and the pad they need to be able to function. And that's, a lot of the work that the Chamber and the EDC do is to try to help businesses get to that place where they are not vulnerable to the inevitable hits that they do take. And again, if we rebuild an economy in a different way, we have an opportunity to not have them be quite so vulnerable. That when businesses are able to pay living wages, and I know that that's hard. I know that the minimum wage has been very hard for many small businesses in this community. But when you have the stability of long-term workers who can afford to live in this community, that makes a huge difference. And we're seeing the impacts right now of a workforce that is not stable.
Yeah, and then I just add that my work with the EDC and with the Chamber on helping businesses to be more effective is something that we have that not a lot of other counties do not have.
Thank you for that work.
And thank you, Jay, for that. It's a great question. And I have a question, Kate, from Facebook, and I think it kind of really ties into why we're having this meeting at all. And one is that there are so many really creative and exciting women, as well as men, in this community who are right now starting businesses. And some of them are on this call right now whose businesses are just less than a year old or a year old and struggling to come out of the back end of whenever this ends pandemic. And through my work and the Chamber's work with SCORE through the SBA, we are mentoring many young women through the process of getting started. You've been through it. You've done this more than once in your career. What's the best advice you would give to them right now when they're looking at, as you have, and as I have, and as so many of these people I see who are now past that stage in their development? How did you keep going? What motivated you? And how can they look toward the end of the struggle to being successful, whatever that means for them?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, there was a lot of youth and hubris involved, which means a lot of hard lessons learned. um, I think that whatever wisdom I have gained from having started a couple of businesses in this community um, really stems from. I would answer your question by saying I would encourage young entrepreneurs right now to really be thinking very clearly about the life they want to create for themselves. And you know, in business planning, you might call that a 5 or 10 year business plan, but I think more specifically, it's about what kind of lifestyle do I want, and you know, I did the like willing to live on poverty wages for many years and didn't realize the impact that that had, the stressor that creates. I was not thinking, oh, I want to, you know, be able to own my home and not work 80 hours a week when I have small children, because that's going to create enormous stressors. It won't be parenting as I want to. I wasn't willing to think about, and maybe just not able to think about the future in a way that I wish that I had. And I really encourage folks to be very honest with themselves about the future that they want, and to kind of keep their eye on that, because it can be such a important directional indicator in decision making, as challenges arise, as they always will, to be thinking, is this going to get me closer to that place where I want to be in the future or not?
Thank you. It's great advice, and I think a lot of us can relate to that path. Are there other questions that Kate can answer?
I do see a couple in the chat,
I
Arlene.
do as well, so go ahead, Kate.
Yeah. So Gabriella asks, how does an organization approach you with a project that might benefit from rescue funding? So much of the work that we are funding did go through a community process that we set up last summer when we had the CARES funding. And there were a number of broad-based community groups formed around specific sectors. Broadband was one, events and culture was one, children and families was one. I can't remember what Arlene, do you remember the name of the business and economy maybe? And those groups went through a fairly arduous process of identifying and I wouldn't say ranking or scoring so much, but really trying to assess project ideas for feasibility. So through that process, kind of ended up with a bit of a laundry list of prioritized projects to fund. And so that is in part what we are using to help decide on projects. Some opportunities have arisen since then. For example, legislation passed this year that now allows the PUD to be an internet provider. And I will say, I don't think they plan to necessarily be a provider, but they can now be installing internet or fiber that a service provider can use. Anyway, they have a new role in broadband and they are actively taking that on, which I really applaud. And so we will, for example, be reorienting some of the funding, because that had certainly been identified in that plan as a high priority. So there's some opportunistic things that come up like that we want to be able to pivot. It's unusual for local government to have a windfall of revenue. So again, if the things that we can kind of help push over the finish line, some opportunistic, and then some that came out of the plan. And I'm happy to find a link to that plan if anyone's interested to see. We compiled all of the work of the community groups in those prioritized projects.
And there's another question from Jessica Plum, and we're delighted to see Jessica today. She is one of the awardees, as is Casey Upshaw, of the Chamber's first Community Development Grant. So congratulations to both of you. And Jessica posted a question in the chat for you, Kate.
May I
Yes.
ask one more question?
Sure.
Is it, and just because we can wrap that question up, then is it possible for us to continue expanding now that we have a specifically like a women's group? To continue talking about projects that might make a difference together?
I certainly don't want to rule it out. We have way more requests for funding than we have funding available. And so there's we have a couple of big housing projects that we need to kind of get the final, the kind of total on what those are going to cost, because housing is a huge priority for us. So things are a little bit on pause right now. We did one distribution to some of those organizations I listed, a little bit on pause now, waiting to see where those housing projects come in. And then we'll be reconsidering kind of what is left. If there are projects that you feel have a big impact, are ready to go, you know, again, we want these to be like on the ground, running, across the finish line, have some impact. And I was a grant writer. I know it's annoying when funders say that. It is, you know, there's so much need for just capacity building for so many organizations to be able to do good work. I get that. But we really want these funds to be used in ways that we can't normally do, and because it's just unprecedented. So if you have a great idea, you're welcome to contact me. I can't promise anything, but if you have something you feel fits in that criteria of like, this is going to change the way things operate in this community, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
And Gabriella, I just want to follow that up by saying that the Chamber is starting a series of task forces for different sectors of the community, and women-owned businesses is one, where we're going to have conversation and dialogue and share ideas and see what we feel is necessary to guide the community toward future sustainability and vitality, and see how we all can, working together, make some of those things happen. So reach out to me offline, and we'll figure out what group you need to be in, and we'll get you connected. If I don't see another question in the chat, then
I think there are a couple.
Jessica has
okay,
one.
good.
Yeah, and then Tina's. So Port Townsend was designated as a creative district in Washington State during the pandemic. Do you anticipate any rescue funds being used to foster the creative economy in Jefferson County? So again, in the community groups last year, a couple of the priorities that the arts and culture group came up with, events and culture, excuse me, was the need for more infrastructure for outdoor events. And I mean, they turned out to be more prescient than I was. You know, we thought, oh, you know, we're not going to need it to do outdoor events again, right? We're going to get past this and be able to be indoor again. No, wrong. So the county purchased for and gave to the Production Alliance, which has a nonprofit arm, two large outdoor tents, a bathroom trailer. I believe there was some heaters, additional equipment to be able to, that was their number one ranked need for that sector. So that one has been funded, and that was shockingly expensive, as you know, things often are. But it was a pretty good chunk of our CARES dollars last year did go to that prioritized need from that community. I have not seen anything else come across my radar. But yeah, that's the one I'm aware of, and that was kind of ranked as the most important. So that is now available to nonprofit groups, to community groups, There's an agreement that the rental of those is highly subsidized because it was bought by the county with the intent of community benefit. So those are available through Production Alliance. Okay, I see you one. Can you repeat what you said about local retail taxes? So we have big increase due to folks staying here and purchasing here. So I don't, let's see, I don't see anyone from the city. I do not want to speak for the city. They're in a different boat, I know. So the county saw sales tax increase, and we only received the portion of sales that happen outside of city limits. And ours increased, I think, I mean, we can only guess, because instead of people going shopping in, Clallam County or Kitsap County, instead of people traveling to shop largely at big box retail stores, when we were staying home, we were shopping online instead, and the county gets that revenue instead of Kitsap County or Clallam County when we leave for it. It's luckily this law was just changed a couple of years ago. It used to be that, well, maybe 5 or 7 years ago now, it used to be when you'd shop on Amazon, it was like where the distribution center would get the sales tax or something. It was kind of upside down. So now we do get that. Port Townsend did not see the same bump in revenue. More of their sales tax revenues come from people visiting and shopping here. And with that greatly decreased, they saw significant reduction in revenue. So I feel a little bit badly saying that the county is in better shape in terms of revenues, because I know the city is not, and they're hurting, and that is really difficult for them to deal with. I think it is recovering for them, but they had to furlough staff and take some drastic measures that the county didn't have to. So somebody asked what was revenue from sales tax, Cami. I would need to, I don't want to misspeak on that. I could certainly send it to you. And I almost made a point today about the percentage of our revenue that comes from sales tax versus property tax. Those are really the two primary sources of revenue that the county has, and property tax by law can only increase total by 1% a year. So that does not increase very quickly. It does not keep up with inflation or population growth by any means. And sales tax, so it's about 30% of our revenue, but I don't hold me to that.
All right. One last question for Kate, or shall we let her get back to work helping us grow this county back? All right. Kate, thank you so much. This is seriously informative, and thank you for sharing so much about you, because I think that there are so many people that are new that they don't know the history and how long you've been here and what you've accomplished. And we are so grateful to you for joining us today. Thank you so much. Hope to have you back soon when we come up for air again.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Thank you so much. And some of the questions that come across my desk are from young entrepreneurs in the community, retiree entrepreneurs in this community, and from our SCORE group, who are always asking, how do I get the money to fund this great idea I have? I don't have any. I need money to do this, but it's such a cool idea. What do I do with it now? And so toward that end, we are excited to have with us today the Seattle District Office of the U.S. Small Business Administration, aka the SBA, Desiree Albright and Jamie Seiko. And please take it away and go ahead and share your screen and say who you are and what you do, and let's see if we can answer some of those burning questions.
Thanks so much for having us today. I'm Desiree Albrecht, and I am an economic development specialist with SBA. I've been with the office for about 8 years out of Seattle. So my main job is helping entrepreneurs and small businesses connect to the resources that they need to start and grow their businesses. And I've also got Janie with me, who is newer to SBA, but definitely not new to the small business realm. And so Some of what we're going to cover today is we're going to be talking about, basically how to access credit. Some of a little briefly, very, very briefly about women-owned certifications, resources for women-owned businesses, and upcoming COVID recovery webinars that we have going on. And of course, how to stay connected to us. If you're like, oh, I didn't know this was happening. It would have been nice to know ahead of time. I didn't know, then let's make sure that we get you connected to those resources. So for the moment being, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie. She's going to take us through the first half, and I'm going to take it through the second half, and we are going to fly at an enormously fast pace to try and get everyone out of here on time. So and make sure we have some time for questions. So this is definitely very abbreviated sources of information, but definitely feel free to reach out to us with additional questions or follow up with the resources that are listed. So Jamie, go ahead.
Thank you, Desiree and Arlene, for having us. Let's go on to the next slide. We're going to talk about the 5 C's of credit. They are capacity, cash flow, collateral, capital, and character. Not in that order, but that's pretty much what I'm going to cover, and then some of the lending sources that are in our community. So first of all, you do, as a startup business and an existing one, need to demonstrate capacity. So what is that? Well, what it really means is, do you have an ability to achieve performance through your business operation? Some of the evaluative tools that a financial partner would use are making sure that you have up to 2 years of industry experience. They prefer it to be recent. A couple of exceptions to that 2 years of industry experience are if you acquire rights to a franchise operation, or if you are acquiring an existing business. But you do need to still have transferable skills that you can demonstrate you have a capacity to operate that business. I'm sorry, there's a little bit going on in the background with someone, so I don't want to talk too loud, but I may have to hear. Okay, so what do you need to provide? Well, you need to provide resumes in a very beefed up format for each 20% or more owner of the business. And it's also recommended that you provide resumes for each key employee in the business that's going to help you operate. So it's not a traditional resume in the sense of applying for a job. This job that you're applying for is for you to operate your business. And so when I say beefed up, I want you to talk about what skills you garnered in the jobs that have transferable skill base over to what you want to do as a startup operation. Things like human resource management, bookkeeping skills, cash flow projection, inventory management, all of the things that may be relevant for your business type, you want to involve and put in that resume. You want to talk about what you achieved for your employer based on your skills in each one of the positions, and highlight that with a focus on this business you want to do, in particular if you're a startup. If you're an expanding business, you want to focus on what you know about that new market and how you're going to incorporate that information into your existing operation. For those of you that may be looking at starting a business, the other thing you want to include in that resume data is any training or certification that is relevant to the business operation or the industry. You also want to talk about your education as it's applicable to that as well. All right, next slide, please. So again, who to cover in your business plan, focus on you, any other 20% or more owner. Even if they are not going to be active, you want to find out what their role is in your business. And again, some of the other key employees, if you have an advisory board or board of directors, put that information into, because they are all going to help you be successful in your operation. The other thing we like to see from a lending standpoint is information about how you made a determination about who you're going to use for contracted service providers such as an attorney or CPA, a bonding agent if you're a contractor, and your insurance agent, and what they are going to do for you in terms of services provided. Next slide, please. On cash flow, what I really want you to focus on is get a cash flow projection document that is easy for you to use. And if you need a cash flow projection document, we do have resources at the SBA that we can refer you to. But what I like to start with, there are essentially a few different components in a cash flow projection. And cash flow projections are needed for a startup and for an expanding business both, right? For a startup, you want to do the first 12-month cash flow projection on a monthly basis. The second year may be done on an annualized basis. But in either case, you need to show what your numbers are and how you originated them. So we call that assumption-based. You want, for every line you put on your cash flow projection, you want to know your assumptions and the logic path behind that. All right. So when I'm doing training on the cash flow projection document specifically, what I have people start with really is the operating expenses and cost of goods sold. But when you go back up to the revenues, you're going to be looking at items that I have demonstrated here on this page. Who's your client base? What's their demographic capacity to support your business? Who's your competition? Who's your primary, secondary, tertiary competitor? You need to know these things because you need to know how to approach your marketing position. And your marketing position will cost money typically to attract your client base. Okay, next slide, please. When you're talking about your cost of goods, what you want to talk about is how you're going to position yourself in your industry regarding your markup. You want to talk about who your vendors are, suppliers are. Are they going to give you terms? When do you have to pay them? How long will it take you to develop terms for a delayed payment so that you can utilize their resources while you're generating revenue or sales with your product and collecting the money from your client base to be able to take out those funds and pay your vendor. The thing that I really have people focus on, again, first is the operating expenses. Are they reasonable? Are they germane for your business? You need to have an idea of where you're going to locate your business. If you are having to find a leased facility, then keep in mind that that lease with the first option for the lease and then options to renew, you will need to make sure that they match the term of the loan. And for most startup businesses, you're going to be having the opportunity to do a 10-year maturing loan with an SBA guarantee. So again, think about that lease. You don't have to have a signed lease, but you should have an offer or a letter of interest tied to your lease document. And that will provide you with, again, options to stay in the space for up to a 10-year period of time if that's what you want your loan to be. Again, make sure you've got everything covered in there that's relevant and applicable to your business as far as an operating expense. These are often the easiest things to estimate at the very beginning because they're controllable. You can go out and get bids on them, as are the cost of goods sold issue, because you are contracting with vendors and you know who you are going to work with. Next slide, please. The next piece or component of this is capital. And what I want you to think about is you have the ability at the beginning of this process to develop your ownership path and determine the business type that you're going to have. So if you cannot fund this business on your own, then you may want to think about having a limited liability company or a sub-S corporation or a C corporation to help you bring people into your organization for that capital base. Next slide, please. What I really want to have you focus on here is your capacity to borrow based on your capital injection. With the SBA Guaranteed Loan Program, your minimum contribution, again, the minimum contribution for a startup business is 10%. So that means that you can have up to $9 of debt for every dollar of equity. However, that what we call leverage ratio or debt to equity ratio is analyzed by the lender that you are approaching to help you get the funding. So they may require you to put in 20% or 30% or 35%, especially on a startup business, because a startup carries significantly more risk than a business that tends to have been in operation and has a historical source of revenue. Yeah, unless you're in an economic environment like we are now, which happens periodically, and we have a downturn. So I say this with a little bit of common sense about how to approach this. But again, your lender makes a decision. It's their risk underwriting that you're having to comply with. When you utilize or look for a financial institution that is using an SBA guarantee, they understand that your minimum contribution can be that 10%. What I do want you to know is if you are buying a business, a portion of that contribution may be from a seller note. So keep that in mind. Your capital injection may also be from family members or friends in the form of gifted funds, or from family members and friends in the form of notes payable. The financial institution will typically ask you to fully subordinate those obligations to the senior lender, which may be a financial institution or one of the alternative lenders I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Next slide, please. Collateral is kind of the least of your concerns, but I do want to point out that the desired goal for every financial institution is to have 100% coverage of the loan amount in the form of liquidation value business assets. In the event you cannot come up with enough liquidation value collateral to support your loan amount, the SBA allows a lender to still extend a guarantee on the loan, but they will ask you for life insurance coverage for the difference between the liquidation value of the collateral that you have to secure the loan versus the loan amount. They may also ask for disability insurance if this is the only source of income for you personally and for the business. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you have here is the liquidation schedule for business assets. Next slide, please.
Janie, you got muted somehow. Janie.
Okay, I'm back, I think. Am I?
Yeah. You're
All right.
here. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my computer. It went dark entirely. So, okay, the screen did. All right, so collateral, these are the personal assets and liquidation values that the lenders would use. Again, rely on your lender to do the underwriting for you. Next slide, please. The last component here is your character. That is your credit score. Lenders are required to pull a credit report on each 20% or more owner in the business. What I'm encouraging all to do is get a free credit report from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion before you approach a financial institution to make sure you understand what your credit history looks like, get it cleaned up, and you can provide a copy of that document to your lender in lieu of them initially doing a credit pull on you. When they do a hard credit pull, that reduces your credit score. Next slide, please. I've included a little bit of information in here that I am not going to cover for time sensitivity, but I put it in so you would have a little bit more information. Next slide, please. Traditional funding sources are the financial institutions. They are banks in your community and credit unions in your community that participate in commercial lending directly or in conjunction with the SBA programs. So please start with your local financial institutions to see if they can help you. You can also go to the SBA website and get connected through Lender Match, and I've included the link here on this slide. If you put a little bit of information in about your business and your business needs in the Lender Match program, it opens you up to a nationwide sourcing of lenders who may contact you to try and meet your needs. Next slide, please. We have a great number of alternative lenders in our community, and I've listed them along with their website and phone number that I could find. Mercy Corps is a little bit tough to get a phone number for, but if you go to their website, you can interact with them online. What I want you to understand about the alternative lenders is that they all have varying dollar amounts that they will loan to you, but they are our lending partners in one form or fashion with an SBA product. And they can all meet needs in your local community. And sometimes they are your primary lender. Sometimes they are a co-lender with a financial institution. So depending on how much money you have, and what your underwriting requirements are for your financial institution, you can look at these resources as a support base or a primary lending base for your business needs. And that's true whether you're a startup or an expanding business. And I think that's it for me, Desiree. And I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Janie. I know that was really quick and down dirty. We could go on for probably a couple hours on financing alone because it is a pretty complex topic, along with the other things that we're going to cover. So definitely we're happy to come back and do deeper dives into some of these different topics in the future if there's definitely demand or need or more questions, because this is a really high level overview. So I know we get asked a lot with women-owned businesses. Oh, I'm a woman-owned business. I need to be certified. Yeah, maybe. It depends on the business that you're in and what you're doing. So if you're selling, maybe cupcakes at a farmer's market, or your primary people that you're selling to is not a government agency like the state, the port, the federal government, universities, things like that, chances are you probably don't need to go through the hassle and the headache of being a certified woman-owned small business and getting certification and maintaining that, because it's really not going to impact your business. Now you can market yourself as woman-owned, all day long, every day to your buyers and your consumers and leverage that, but you don't necessarily need to be certified unless your target, one of your target audiences is selling to the federal government, the state government, local ports, things like that. And if that is the case, then there are certifications that you can get to have your business certified as a woman-owned business, because the federal government does try to every year award at least 5% of all federal contract dollars to women-owned small businesses. And that can be women-owned or economically disadvantaged women-owned. And the certification process for that has changed recently. And so I would definitely recommend checking out the website for the full program details, because you can self-certify or you can use a third-party certifier to get that done. And if you have questions, definitely our lead business opportunity over in Spokane, John, his contact information is here. He's kind of our woman-owned certification expert, if you will. I send all my questions to him, and your local PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, can also help. And towards the end, I have a link for how to find all of our resource partners near you. So you can use that to also find your local PTAC office if you think, hey, maybe woman-owned certification is something that's for me, or maybe you're not sure if it's right for you or not. Having those conversations with business advisors, they can kind of help you decide, is this something that's going to be worth your time and effort to pursue? So speaking of some of the resources for women-owned businesses, SBA's got tons of resources. Just know that tons. So to start out, we've got our women's business centers. We've got 3 of them here in Washington. So we've got one in Seattle, one in Lacey, and one in Spokane. And so they focus on helping women business owners and entrepreneurs, but they'll help everybody. So they won't turn you away if you are one of those brave men that showed up today. They're still going to help you. They just focus on helping women business owners start and grow their businesses, whether that's through individual confidential business advising, or whether that's through training, or through even just getting you connected with various resources that maybe you didn't know were available to you as a woman-owned small business. So definitely check them out. And there's no cost for those advising services. And some of the training ones are free and some have a small fee, just depending. Again, there's the link for all of our SBA resource partners. So we've got a wide network, depending on where you are and what you need. So you can either, type in your zip code and do some searching on your own, or you can feel free to reach out to our office. And we're happy to make some referrals for you as well. One of the new things that SBA came out with this year to try and help women-owned small business is we launched an online training center called Ascent, which is basically an online learning platform specifically targeted for middle growth women business owners. There is stuff in there for startups too, and established businesses, but really that missing middle, what we like to call, if you will, the missing middle for women businesses who are just on that brink of growth, or you're generating revenue and you're wanting to scale that business, but you need some resources to do that. So this is an online self-paced type of free education, if you will. So you can do it, after the kids are in bed. You can do it, in the morning when you're having coffee or tea or whatever before you start your day. And it's customizable. So you can take these, there's kind of like originally 5 separate tracks that I'll show you in a second that started. I think they've expanded it since it's launched, but you can basically create your own path and journey through this information to get out of it what you need for your business. So we've got paths about disaster and economic recovery, strategic marketing, your people, which is basically HR, financial strategies, and access to capital. And I believe if they haven't already, they are in the process of adding one for contracting, and that information might be sprinkled out throughout there with the certifications and things. But really, at the end of the day, you just visit the website, ascent.sba.gov, you register for an account, and you could just go in there and pick what works for you, what you want to see, what you want to learn. And it gives you tips and tools and actionable takeaways and worksheets and all sorts of things to help kind of get you going and get you the information that you need. And you can use that in conjunction with our local resource partners as well. So last but not least, we do have, like I said, everything's really super condensed. I know that with some of the operating businesses that have been around for a while, you may or may not have gotten a COVID EIDL loan. But there are new program updates that were just announced yesterday. So things like increasing the cap to 2 million per business, allowing uses of funds to be, you can use funds to prepay commercial debt, pay federal debt, things that you weren't able to do with the funds before, you're now able to do. So that's whether you are a new applicant or whether you are wanting to embark on an increase, or maybe you're somewhere in the middle and you're working through your increase application. We are having a couple of upcoming webinars on the following dates, the 17th and the 21st, to really kind of dive deep into these COVID EIDL updates and how you can utilize the program. And so I would definitely recommend checking that out. I don't know if we're going to be able to record those sessions. So if you could make time in your schedule, that would be the best. And last but not least, if you're like, wow, that's so great, I didn't know, we sent an email out at like 7:30 this morning. So if you get those, you might have seen that. If you don't get our emails, I would definitely visit the subscribe link, so the sba.gov/updates. We try not to spam you too much. We try to keep it to important information in emails, but you will get stuff from our headquarters office, from our office, occasionally from the regional office, but it's usually timely, important information. And it's our main way that we're able to communicate from our local office here in Seattle about things that are happening near us. So you're going to get updates, events, all sorts of different things that are happening. And if you just want to know what's happening, that's the best way to do it. Or you can even follow us on Twitter, but honestly, I don't know who does that. I don't do Twitter. But the rest of our information is listed here on the slide. Don't come and visit us right now because our offices are closed. So I would revert to either sending us an email or giving us a call. And if you do call our office, just know you can skip all the talky blah, blah, blah things that you get on the phone and just hit 0. And that'll take you to the place where you can leave us a message. Because since we are closed, you have to leave a message and then we'll call you back. And we typically return those calls the same day, if not the very next day. So usually within 24 hours, we'll return those calls. And you can call us about anything, whether it's questions about financing, access to capital, resources, EIDL, PPP. It just doesn't really matter. Just give us a call and we'll get you kind of pointed in the right direction. So with that, I want to go ahead and just open it up for any questions that have come up or that you all have that we haven't answered. Or questions that we've created. Maybe that's a better way to say it, Arlene, as we're speed going through some of these.
You're muted.
Yep, yeah, Arlene, you're muted.
Arlene? You're muted.
Isn't that interesting? Now it's showing I'm muted. Welcome to Zoom. So thank you to Jamie, and we are grateful that the two of you could come, Desiree, and join us. And we are definitely going to take you up on inviting you back to a Women in Leadership group and to letting you take a deeper dive here and maybe some interactive QA for the entire session so that it can be a real workshop for all of those entrepreneurs in our community who really need a lot of help. And so we'll set that up offline. And I see Lori has her hand up. So Lori is a very successful entrepreneur. Lori, take it away.
Thank you, Arlene, and thanks for that. Ladies, I appreciate the presentation. I just wanted to throw my name out there as a local resource right here in Jefferson County. So I have a lot of extensive experience. I've done SBA, I've done, the PPPs, the IDLs, I've done all kinds of things in the last 30 years. And I have some unique experiences with all of the above. And I am certified state and federally, and actually on 2 different companies. And, that was a complete journey, just the paperwork alone. And I just wanted to throw my name out there, and I can put my phone number in the chat. Feel free if you want somebody locally to answer some questions. I am absolutely here for you. And I'll throw that in the chat. So.
Thank you, Lori. We appreciate that. And truly, this is a woman with a fantastic career and amazing experience. So she's been our guest speaker once before, and we're going to try to convince her to come back and do that.
Thanks,
Other
Arlene.
questions for the team? I am not seeing a hand up, but I'm seeing in the Amber, who has a fabulous business in Port Townsend, is looking for grants or programs with the SBA for small business, more energy efficient, or looking at green energy.
Right. So I don't know that, and Janie might be able to chime in and support my knowledge base here, because honestly, everything's been COVID for the last 18 months. So I'm a little rusty around the edges, but I believe that I know SBA doesn't have any programs specific for that, but you could definitely use regular SBA loans to accomplish that. But in terms of specific funding for going green, I believe there are some USDA business programs. Am I right, Janie, that are out there for small businesses to be able to do some of those energy efficiencies and upgrades? It's like their business and industry loans.
Yes, the U.S. Department of Agriculture actually has a loan guarantee program that is serving the rural markets. And what you need to do is go on to the USDA.gov website, plug in your address of your business, and make a determination if you're in a rural market area. They have a tremendous number of loan programs for the benefit of businesses. The one nice thing that I always, as a lender for 30 odd years, used to like about it is that unlike the SBA, on commercial real estate development, you don't have to have owner occupancy. It can be an income property transaction, which is a little bit different than what we're talking about here, but I just thought I'd throw that out because I believe you're in most of the county may be rural. The other thing though is that Craft 3, one of the alternative lenders on the list, they are eco-friendly and they have programs specifically for that need. I believe that the other one I would try is Business Impact Northwest. And both entities can do a direct loan or a loan in conjunction with an SBA guarantee. So those are great resources for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and Craft Free is a fabulous resource, and they are in fact chamber members. So we are always happy to connect those dots with them for you. I want to thank both of you for joining us today. We definitely will schedule you back. It's a wealth of information, and I know there are tons of questions coming in on Facebook, but I want to make sure that we have time for you guys to do some pitches for who you are and what you're doing and exciting things that are coming up. Our next Chamber Cafe is September 17th, and Congressman Derek Kilmer is going to be joining us to give his legislative update, and we will also have with us the HR pros at Express Employment who are going to offer some suggestions on working through some of the staffing challenges we are having due to this economy right now. So please put that on your calendar, and the registration is open for September 17th, Friday, on the Chamber website for Chamber Cafe. Now, Candace, I know you have a briefly, so you always do, so I'm going to call on you first.
I actually don't have, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. You're fine.
I'm like, I can't see my light. I actually don't have anything today, but of course, we're staying busy at the bank and seeing all kinds of new accounts coming in. We're open, our lobby's open, and we're happy to see anybody that wants to come in.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in and let us know what exciting things you're up to? Nothing exciting going on? Diana, there's nothing going on out there, right? You've got all kinds of stuff.
So at the Fireside Restaurant, we do have our farm dinners that are still ongoing, which is fantastic. We work directly with the farms, and then we create a 3-course meal showcasing their items, which is really fun, and a little bit of creativity in what's served. Our social media shows every Wednesday what's on the menu. What else? We returned the happy hour at the Fireside Restaurant, and we're still closed Monday and Tuesdays because of service staff, but we have seen some resumes, which is very good news. We're also working on the Mitch Black charity tournament. He was the golf instructor coach at the local high school, and that charity tournament is scheduled for September, so it's going to happen pretty quick. And then our golf winter series starts in October, which is great. And that's probably about it. I know that there was a concert recently in Port Ludlow. We did a Volks walk, which was really fun. And then also there's a car show coming in September that should also be very interesting. The Resort at Port Ludlow website does have events happening. So if you're ever wondering, oh, is there something going on this weekend? It is on our website and very easy to find right below the picture. It'll say events happening, but it's a great way to stay up on the things going on.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today and taking time out for this. We hope you'll join us again for the 17th and for the upcoming Women in Leadership events. Thank you again to Commissioner Dean and to Desiree and Jamie for bringing your insight and information to our meeting today. We wish you all a wonderful upcoming weekend, and to stop just for a minute in your busy day tomorrow on 9/11 and think about where you were 20 years ago and all the things that have happened since, and remember remember that day. Stay safe and healthy, and most of all, right now, help our community, please. Shop local. Have a good one. Bye-bye.